Hi, everybody. I'm Bryan Mudd, a fan of South Plains politics. Here's your talking points for this week. The Second Amendment's a big part of Texas life and politics, but state leaders are looking at establishing new reasons to take some people's weapons away from them. This week, we saw more illegal border crossings and more protests for new immigration laws, but we'll show you what you don't see every day. Eyes in the sky, dealing with the issue up close.
From the studios of KMAC Television in Lubbock, your local election headquarters. This is Talking Points with Bryan Mudd, brought to you by Capital Mortgage Services.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Also this week, wants versus needs. Texas Tech Chancellor Robert Duncan's about to celebrate his 4th year running the tech system. He is not getting a gift card from Texas A&M's John Sharp, who no doubt's a little sore that Duncan is trying to fill the needs of West Texas ranchers by kicking the door down on A&M's veterinary school monopoly. Sharp says he wants to keep said monopoly and tried to argue as much recently in the Dallas Morning News, but Duncan's political chops makes it easy for him to shrug off the verbal uppercuts, which is about to make him even more valuable for Texas Tech and all of the region. He discussed that and more with KMAC's Avery Travis.
It's an accomplishment students come across, and we shake every hand.
It's Chancellor Duncan's favorite part.
4,000 hands is a lot of hands to shake.
And with more handshakes on the horizon as the Texas Tech system grows, partnering with the Health Sciences Center for the Mental Health Institute and plans for a dental school in El Paso.
Fundamental health care for children and for elderly and for all of us. And a shortage of dentists is very significant in that region.
He says they're stepping up to fill the needs of the state in more ways than one, with the proposed vet school in Amarillo.
Students in Texas are having to go out of state, and we're still not meeting the needs of agriculture communities.
He says they envision a purposeful program placed right in an agriculture epicenter. But causing a stir this week, Texas A&M Chancellor John Sharp with some strong statements in opposition.
Is this a showdown now between Texas A&M and Texas Tech?
I've never seen it that way. In fact, we reached out to Texas A&M in the beginning to see if they wanted to partner, and they chose not to do that. We felt like that their solution was not going to be adequate, and so we started looking at opportunities to be able to provide something that would be effective. There's certainly room in a state of 28 million people for 2 vet schools. We think that we've made the case, and we look forward to working with the legislature.
The former senator says that's one of his biggest hopes for the coming year.
In 2017 was a lean year, and it was one of those budget years where you basically hold your own. So going into 2019, we want to be able to make sure that we fund the basics very well, but then also fund these new opportunities that really are once-in-a-lifetime opportunities for us.
Avery Travis, KMAC News.
Avery, thank you. The protagonist of the Sharp column fiasco in the Dallas Morning News was none other than our man Jay Leeson.
Protagonist.
Host of The Other Side of Texas on KRFE, AM 580. Let's talk about your original column that did some of this craziness here. It talks about Duncan's gamble on the vet school in the first place, but was it a gamble or just a testament to how well Bob Duncan seems to know how the political system in Texas works and the people behind the scenes work?
It was a measured gamble, and that's what I laid out, what I wanted to do. And first, let me say, that column was due back in April, and I kept on telling editors, too many moving parts, too many moving parts. And so whenever things began to slow down a little bit, and the Amarillo Economic Development Alliance called the bet and put up the remaining $69 million Tech needed, it was a series of measured gambles. And I state in the piece that, you know, I try to look at this not in red and black, but for the region. And I think that Tech has the right argument, and I wrote the column in that fashion. But whether or not Duncan knew that John Sharp and A&M were about to lay out a big pipeline plan is something for Sharp and Duncan to talk about off record. Because the way that I understood it was that Duncan wanted to seize the moment in December 2015, and he did. And then it's been a series of John Sharp, who I greatly, and I don't think anybody who pays attention to Texas politics doesn't greatly admire John Sharp. He's on my honorary Mount Rushmore of Texas, and I have a great deal of regard for him. But Duncan has outplayed him in this whole contest. It's gone on 3 years. Some would say 50 years.
Well, yeah, and think about this. And I don't know how much this plays into it. Sharp says A&M asked for $115 million in 2011 to build a new vet school. Didn't get it. Duncan was still in Austin when that happened. Duncan comes to Tech, rolls out the vet school plan within a year. Was talking about it before then?
Well,
I mean, maybe.
Womp womp.
Right.
I mean, look,
you know.
I lay out in the piece what A&M risked by going after this.
Sure.
And we talk about Tech's risk, but there are, 25% of that house chamber are burnt orange ties, okay? But to the PUF fund, he moved that money from the Permanent University Fund, which is revenues that A&M and Texas only get, only those two schools. And it's based on oil and gas revenues out of West Texas public lands. And there's some grazing and some wind that goes with it. But he had to pull 120 from that. Do you know what A&M pulled the last cycle from the PUF fund? $300 million. And UT pulled $600 million. So, oh, well, I thought that was a rather weak argument for Sharp. It was a necessary argument for his side, but I don't think anybody's like, oh, those poor Aggies don't have enough money.
But, in the end, I guess the Texas Higher Ed Board agreed with Duncan's constituents here, and we've talked about it, and we've had people in here talk about it a lot. The A&M vet school just wasn't churning out enough large animal vets on its own to keep up with demand here. I don't care what he says. Two
reports, 2009, 2016, said that. Now, Sharp had a clever way of framing it in his response. My piece ran on the 25th, July 25th, in print in the Dallas Morning News. 2 days later, Chancellor Sharp responded, and he said that it was a temporary vet shortage that they were experiencing. And some people would say, well, if your idea of temporary is 20 years, then I guess it was temporary.
Yeah, well, the key, still was the city of Amarillo and economic development coming through on all
and even
this.
like we lay out Duncan. I say in the piece that Duncan is known for his legislative expertise in Austin and his stealth political victories. We're having these discussions about teacher retirement. You know who got teacher retirement done last time? With a lady named Wendy Davis. It was Bob Duncan. Stealth political victories. So he goes up, in Tech, announce the launch, and then, they walk out of the last legislature, weren't supposed to walk out with a dime, walked out with $4 million. And what's so important about the Amarillo Economic Development Alliance is that just last week, the governor sent out the letters that it initiates the Legislative Budget Board. That officially initiates the process. Well, Tech had money in the kitty for the better part of a month because the Legislative Budget Board is where Tech's going to go and ask for $18 to $20 million for operations, and that'll grow as the school grows. But Tech had the money in hand before they go for construction, before they go in and ask for operations.
15 seconds left. Sharp in his rebuttal says that he basically refers to the fact that he thinks that Tech can't pay for this long term. Can Duncan convince the Higher Ed Board now in the spring and the legislature as well that Tech can fix this need with the way they want to do it? Because Sharp's essentially daring him to go before the board and says we can do it better.
He can make that argument, but Duncan can point back to 40 acres in Austin or to Aggie land and say, you couldn't pay for any of your operations by yourself long term. And it's a fair ask for a university to ask for operational money. Now, if Sharp's holding the cards, we'll see. And that's why I labeled the whole thing Texas Higher Ed Hold'em, because that's where we are right now.
We'll push our chips in this spring, and we'll have our man Jay Leeson here to help us figure it all out, too. Other side of Texas. Got to listen to it as well. Thank you so much, sir. Let's do this week's poll question. Do you agree with the recent government guidance encouraging colleges to no longer consider race as a factor in its admission process? Talk to us on our KMAC News Facebook page and on everythinglubbock.com. Click on Talking Points and give us your opinion. Coming up, South Plains farmers and ranchers caught in the middle of this trade war with China. And five-term House Speaker Joe Straus may be leaving the legislature, but he has no plans to retire to a rocking chair somewhere. 5 good minutes with him next on Talking Points.